What's going on, Buckeye Nation and college football world? You saw the title of the video. The Big Ten is striving and competing with the SEC in everything we do, and they're trying to get 4 teams in to the college football playoffs. Of course, we just got 3 last year with Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. Our Buckeyes won it all. Trying to increase things this year, and there's 3 teams that are in position to do it. As we look at things, obviously Ohio State and Indiana are automatically going to be in, even if they lose out, essentially, especially for Indiana with being 10-0 already. But the Buckeyes could lose 2 of their next 3 and still make the playoffs as it is, with the same record they entered last year. So assuming that Ohio State and Indiana are already locked for the playoffs, sitting at 1 and 2, looking like the 2 best teams in the nation, you could throw Texas A&M in there, of course, as 2 of the 3 undefeated teams left are in the Big Ten Conference. But let's look at the other 3. Of course, we got the Oregon Ducks, Big Ten champions last year. You've got the USC Trojans, and of course, our hated rivals, the Michigan Wolverines. Now let's look at the schedules and break them down just a little bit here. Each team has 3 games remaining. Of course, Oregon is 8-1 at this point in the season. The only loss at home to the number 2 ranked Indiana Hoosiers. They're 9th in the country. They've got, of course, a home game versus 6-3 Minnesota, a scrappy team, but really not competitive with the top 2 teams. Got blown out a couple times this season, but also not some good wins. Then they host, of course, 7-2 USC. It's a Big Ten championship game elimination. It's a playoff eliminator game, basically. We can put it that way. 7-2, the Trojans are 19th in the country at this point of the season. They've had their ups and downs as well. You know, we're certainly going to break down USC here in a second, but Oregon with Dante Moore, man, he led an unbelievable drive to get the victory in Kinnick Stadium. A phenomenal game, phenomenal performance in the fourth quarter by Moore and the Ducks as they escaped Kinnick. Made the heartbeats rise of Duck fans because it was definitely going to be a Big Ten eliminator right there had they lost to Iowa. And honestly, had Iowa won, they'd be in this video as a potential playoff contender. Then, of course, they go to their arch rival, the Washington Huskies. Now, the Huskies have won 2 of the last 3, but Oregon trounced them last season. Jed Fish has Washington kind of on the up and up, but they haven't notched a quality win. In fact, they looked pretty pathetic this past weekend, losing 13-10 to Wisconsin, and they got blasted by Ohio State, and Michigan kind of gave it to them as well. I think winning 24-6. Now Dan Lanning just 1-2 versus Washington in his career at Oregon, but I think he's absolutely going to notch 2-2. So I think it's safe to say that the Oregon Ducks are going to be in. Of course, it all depends on that game versus USC. It is a home game in Autzen Stadium. It's a rare season when Oregon loses twice at home in one slate, so I don't see them losing, but it's very possible. The Trojans and Maava have a very good offense. Now let's talk about the Michigan Wolverines, the easiest of the remaining schedule of these teams competing for that playoff spot. Let's be honest about it, man. Northwestern is a good 5-4 team. They're not sloppy. They're not getting blown out by a lot of teams. They play tough physical defense, much like they did under former head coach Pat Fitzgerald. And it's on the lake, and it can get windy, and crazy things have happened in that stadium. Well, I shouldn't say that stadium, but in Evanston. And then they also travel on the road, so 2 games in a row, but versus a very poor Maryland team. Loxley on his way out. I'm really not sure how he's still employed, to be completely honest, if I'm looking at things objectively. He's kind of had a downward trend since Talia left, and the Maryland Terrapins are not going to put a fight versus the Wolverines, and they typically don't versus Michigan, even when it's in Maryland there. And then, of course, the big showdown versus my Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, they've won 4 straight. They have the mental edge. Let's be honest, though. There's not a football reason that exists that Michigan should beat Ohio State. The fact of the matter is that they do have the mental edge, however. The only thing that the Wolverines do better than Ohio State is run the football. They're a much better running team. Even with Justice Haynes out, Jordan Marshall is still probably better than any running back Ohio State has. Bo Jackson might, outshine him later on in his career, but at this point, as a true freshman compared to Marshall as a redshirt freshman, Marshall is the better back. He also has the better, rushing offensive line. The Wolverines struggled mightily in the early season in pass pro, and they still are struggling with that, if you ask me. But they're excelling in the run game, and they figured out a starting lineup amidst a bunch of injuries and plug-ins, and they really found something there. Doesn't look like Justice Haynes is going to be back for the season. I think he's done for the year. Who knows if he'll ever suit up in a Wolverine uniform again. The 1 year borrow transfer guy. We'll see if he comes back for a senior season. I kind of doubt it. Running backs have a short shelf life in the NFL, and I see him going to get his money in the NFL. But, the fact of the matter is, man, there's been a lot of Ohio State teams that have come into Ann Arbor undefeated, clearly the better team than Michigan, and have come up short against the Wolverines. You don't have to look much further than last year to know that a less talented Michigan team can beat a more talented Ohio State team. I'm up in the air in one of my predictions for this game. I'm obviously not ready to give a prediction yet. Buckeyes clearly the better team. There's no debating that. There just is no debating that. They are the better team. But Michigan has that mental edge. So will the Buckeyes overcome it this year in Ann Arbor and a true freshman Bryce Underwood who's struggling to score touchdowns? Or will the Buckeyes finally get over the hump and end the streak? And then last but not least, we got the USC Trojans, of course, just members of the Big Ten for a year and a half now. They've got a tough stretch too, let's be completely honest. Now, they do host Iowa, and Iowa typically away from Kinnick is a different team than home, with their crowd supporting them there. So they do get to host the Hawkeyes instead of facing Kinnick's Black Magic, so I'd notch that as the W. So that would advance them to 8-2. Then, of course, like I mentioned with Oregon, they travel to Eugene for a showdown with everything on the line. Both teams still have everything to fight for with their season ahead of them. It's crazy to see Lincoln Riley's team continue to struggle defensively. They continue to put up amazing offensive numbers. The receivers are insane. Lemon and others are making Maeva look incredible. And he is a really talented quarterback in his own right. But I do have the Ducks winning this one. They do have the better defense, and it's at home. And USC, I just don't think is going to have the focus because Lincoln Riley is being talked about for a lot of these big-name jobs, and I just think he's going to potentially provide a distraction because he already bolted when nobody thought he would, and he might just do it again. I don't know why you'd leave L.A., and that recruiting-rich pipeline that you have in Southern California and in Northern California. But he surprised us with leaving a blue blood like Oklahoma as well. So we'll see what happens, but I do have the Ducks winning that. I don't have USC making the playoffs. I actually have them finishing 9-3 on the season, just one win shy of Lincoln Riley taking another team to the playoffs, and USC for the first time in program history to the playoffs, it would be. Of course, they finish off with UCLA, crosstown rivals. Man, they've had a nice turnaround story, but they've fallen back. That initial surge of the new coach and new momentum has worn off, and the Bruins and Nico Iamaleava just aren't producing at the clip they should be anymore. Teams have figured them out. Iamaleava's numbers are way down from what he was doing last year at Tennessee. So in multiple ways, the transfer has not worked out for Nico. But the Bruins are going to get embarrassed in this one. And the Trojans should finish 9-3 with wins over Iowa and UCLA, but losing on the road in Autzen Stadium. So to wrap things up, I do have the Oregon Ducks making the playoffs, whether it be at 10-2 or 11-1. I think Oregon is going to make the playoffs. I do think they miss Indy, however. I think that will be Indiana versus Ohio State. But a lot of Big Ten tiebreakers are in play if either Ohio State or Indiana drops the game somehow. The Wolverines are in the next best position to make it. They sit with just 2 losses, but no quality wins yet. When you look at the schedule, who are they beaten? But honestly, when you even look at Ohio State's schedule, who have we beaten outside of Texas, now back inside the top 15, outside of the nation's spotlight, but they've quietly slipped back up into the top 15, and Arch Manning's playing better. But the narrative has already been written about him this season, and that's not going to change. But anyway, Michigan in position, still to reach Indy. All their goals are in front of them. If they finish 10-2 and beat Ohio State, they're absolutely make the playoffs. Hopefully that doesn't happen. USC, as I mentioned, I don't see them making it. So will the Big Ten get 4 teams in the playoffs? My guess is no. It'll just be Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, the 3 teams that are already in the top 10 as we speak right now. I think that's how it shakes out and how it plays out. We're going to see, though. November is where championships are won, and the cream of the crop rises to the top, and we're going to see what happens in the Big Ten Conference. But that's my prediction. Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana making the playoffs. Ohio State and Indiana probably meeting in the Big Ten Championship with everything on the line. Of course, the Heisman on the line between Mendoza and Sayin. The Big Ten Championship on the line, of course. And the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. All up for grabs as long as both teams handle business down the stretch here with 3 games to go for the Buckeyes and 2 for the Hoosiers. That'll do for this one. Go Bucks and God bless. We'll see you on the next one.